The alien Queen Ziara floated above the grand crystal dais, her long, iridescent form shimmering under the twin moon's pale light. The hall stretched endlessly in all directions, a vast arena of polished floors and floating platforms, filled with candidates from countless worlds. Each hoped to be noticed, each dreamed of earning the honor of serving beside the Queen. Some radiated raw power, others displayed exotic technologies or strange biological enhancements. But Zara's sharp eyes swept through them all with quiet indifference. And then she saw him. He was a human, Elias, unlike the others. He carried no exotic weapons, no glowing implants, and no artificial enhancements. His frame was lean, almost fragile compared to the towering alien warriors, and his brown hair fell messily over his forehead. His clothes were simple, patched in places, far from the ornate garments of the other candidates. Yet, there was something about the way he stood. Not arrogance, not pride, but a calm, quiet confidence that seemed to ripple out from him like an invisible pulse. Ziara's heart, trained to be careful and distant, felt a curious stir. "This one," she murmured to herself, her melodic voice echoing through the hall. "Watch him." The room buzzed with whispers. Many of the alien candidates glanced at each other in disbelief. A human? Here? Against beings bred and engineered for greatness? Some laughed quietly, thinking the Queen had made a mistake. Others frowned, seeing him as a potential embarrassment. But Ziara did not flinch. She had seen something in him, something no other candidate could show, a spark of life that was rare, unpredictable, and raw. Elias noticed her gaze. At first, he felt a pang of fear. This was the Queen, the ruler of millions of worlds, and she had singled him out in a crowd of super-powered beings. His pulse quickened, but he straightened his back, squared his shoulders, and met her eyes. There was no bowing, no pleading, only a quiet acknowledgement that he had seen her too. The other candidates, sensing the shift, moved nervously. They had been trained their whole lives for recognition, but none had the humility or the simplicity that Elias carried. That Zara realized was exactly why he mattered. Days passed, and Elias struggled to navigate the alien customs and the strange environment of the palace. Gravity here pressed differently on his body. Air tinged with subtle toxins made his lungs burn, and the language of the court, a series of high-pitched tones and guttural hums, was nearly impossible to follow. Others mocked him relentlessly, whispering that a human could never survive, never compete, never matter. Elias endured in silence, never letting despair show. Zara observed everything from afar. She did not intervene. She did not offer him guidance or comfort. She wanted to see what he was made of, not just in battle, but in spirit. Every stumble he made, every small success he achieved, told her something important about humans, a resilience that alien evolution had forgotten, a courage that was raw and unrefined yet unbreakable. One evening, the air in the hall shimmered with urgency. An alarm echoed, resonating through the crystal walls. Raiders, hostile and swift, were approaching the capital. Every elite soldier, every genetically enhanced candidate, was called to prepare for battle. Panic rippled through the hall. Elias froze. He had no weapons. He had no armor. He had no knowledge of combat. And yet, when Zara's gaze met his across the chamber, a strange calm settled over him. It was not bravery born from training or instinct. It was something deeper, an inner strength, quiet but unshakable, that he did not yet understand himself. Zara whispered softly, almost to herself, "Watch closely, human. Show me what you are capable of." Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment press against his chest. He did not know what awaited him, but a strange certainty coursed through his veins. Something inside him was ready to awaken. Something that no alien, no warrior, no machine could predict. And in that instant, the human who seemed ordinary in every way prepared to step into a destiny that would leave the galaxy forever. Changed. The alarm still echoed through the crystal halls. When the alien soldiers and enhanced candidates rushed to their battle stations, the air buzzed with energy, a mixture of fear, determination, and adrenaline. Elias stood frozen for a moment, his eyes wide as he watched warriors teleport onto the battlefield, weapons humming with power, and ships lifting off the ground in precise formations. He had no weapons, no training, no chance, at least that's what his mind kept telling him. Yet, when he looked toward the dais, Ziara's eyes met his, calm and unwavering. There was no instruction, no encouragement, only observation. She was not interested in raw strength. She was watching for something deeper. The first wave of raiders breached the outer perimeter. Their ships were dark, angular, and bristling with unknown weaponry. Alien soldiers fired beams of pure energy, and explosions rippled through the battlefield, casting reflections across the crystal towers. Chaos erupted, and for a moment, Elias felt panic claw at his chest. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to survive. But something else whispered within him, "You are here for a reason." Step forward. He moved before he knew he had decided. His feet carried him to the edge of the combat zone, and he raised his hands instinctively. Nothing happened. Confusion threatened to paralyze him again. But the whisper inside grew stronger. "Reach. Trust yourself." Closing his eyes, he focused not on the weapons, not on the ships, not even on the soldiers around him. He focused on the energy of the battlefield itself, the life pulsing through it, the chaos and the fear and the hope all blended together. And then, a spark ignited within him. A wave of power surged outward from his core, small at first, almost hesitant, but unmistakably real. A raider ship hovering nearby shuddered violently. Its engines faltered. Beams misfired. Pilots screamed in panic as the craft spiraled uncontrollably before crashing into the crystal spire of the city. The battlefield froze for a heartbeat, then erupted into murmurs and astonished gasps. A human had just disrupted the raiders, assault with nothing but his own unseen force. Elias barely understood what he had done, but he felt a strange clarity. It was as if the energy had always been inside him, waiting for this moment to awaken. He reached again, pushing farther this time, shaping barriers of light to shield civilians and redirecting energy blasts away from soldiers who had no time to react. Every instinct he had about survival and protection guided him. Every choice was driven by compassion and quick thinking, rather than brute force. Zira watched from her dais, her eyes widening with a mix of awe and disbelief. She had known humans were unpredictable, but she had never imagined this. Not raw power alone, but courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect. All wrapped into one fragile-looking being that stood unarmed amidst chaos, his chest heaving, his hands glowing with the unseen force of his own potential. The elite candidates could barely keep up. Many of them had trained for centuries, mastered the deadliest weapons, and yet none could match the human's combination of instinct and raw, untapped energy. His movements were elegant and unpredictable. One moment, he deflected a beam that would have obliterated a squad. The next, he redirected falling debris away from terrified civilians. Every action revealed more about his mind, his heart, and his unique connection to something the aliens could not understand. When the battle finally ended, the battlefield littered with the wreckage of raider ships. Zara descended from her dais, her long form gliding silently. The air was thick with tension, soldiers still trembling from the unexpected assault. Every eye followed her, waiting for her judgment, yet her gaze went straight to Elias. He stood there, exhausted, trembling, yet upright, his expression calm despite everything. The human who had seemed so ordinary a day ago had just changed the course of a battle without a weapon, without armor, without training, simply by trusting himself. "Remarkable," she whispered to herself, a rare smile brushing her lips. "This human, he is something the galaxy has never seen before." And in that moment, Elias realized that whatever had awakened inside him, it was only the beginning. The sun had barely risen over the crystalline towers of the capital when news arrived. Another raider fleet was approaching, larger and more organized than the last. Panic rippled through the city. Even the most seasoned alien soldiers looked uneasy, their advanced weapons no longer feeling like guarantees of safety. Elias stood among them, exhausted from the previous battle, his arms still trembling slightly from the energy he had unleashed. He had no armor, no weapon, nothing that any conventional warrior would call an advantage. And yet, something inside him had changed. He no longer feared the chaos around him. The energy that had awakened in him yesterday hummed quietly, a pulse he could feel in his veins, steady and certain. The raider ships breached the outer defenses with terrifying speed. Alien artillery fired back, but the enemy was swift and cunning, weaving between beams and dodging missiles. Civilians scattered in panic as debris and sparks rained down from damaged towers. Soldiers barked orders, but many knew that this battle would require more than standard tactics. Zara's gaze was fixed on Elias, from her perch above the battlefield. She could see the human hesitate at first, unsure, almost invisible amid the chaos. But then she noticed something remarkable. He was observing. Not the ships, not the soldiers, not the explosions, but the flow of the battle itself, the rhythm of energy and motion around him. Without warning, Elias stepped forward. The moment his hands brushed the hull of a raider ship hovering above the city, a ripple of energy surged outward. The ship shook violently as its systems malfunctioned. Alarms blared. Pilots scrambled, but it was too late. The craft spun wildly before crashing into the nearby spire with a deafening explosion. Shock spread across the battlefield. Alien soldiers halted mid-attack, staring at the human with a mixture of disbelief and awe. Elias had no weapon, no mechanical assistance, yet he had destroyed a heavily armed ship with nothing but his presence, his energy, and his will. Emboldened, he reached out again. This time, his hands glowed faintly as streams of energy lanced toward incoming raider blasts, redirecting them harmlessly into the sky. Debris from shattered ships and falling towers hovered around him, suspended in shimmering fields of light that seemed to bend at his command. Civilians and soldiers alike moved through the gaps he created, protected by an invisible shield that pulsed with warmth and strength. Zyra descended closer, her eyes wide. She had trained warriors for centuries, seen leaders of entire fleets, yet none had displayed this level of instinct, courage, or raw power. It was not just strength. It was creativity, empathy, and strategy all blended seamlessly. Elias adapted to each new threat with a fluidity that left even the best soldiers struggling to keep up. One particularly massive raider ship, larger than the others, hovered above the city, firing energy beams that disintegrated anything they touched. Elias stretched out both hands, and a network of golden light spread across the battlefield like roots, connecting to fallen ships and debris. Slowly, the massive ship began to shudder, its weapons misfiring. With a final surge, it spiraled out of control, crashing into the outskirts of the city and exploding in a brilliant cascade of fire and sparks. The battlefield fell silent for a heartbeat. Then came the whispers, the gasps, the murmurs of soldiers who could barely comprehend what had happened. The human's power was beyond anything they had been taught to expect. Zyra landed beside him as the last of the raider ships fell. Her long form radiated awe, her eyes fixed on the human standing before her. Sweat dripped down his brow, his chest heaved, and his hands still glowed faintly with residual energy. He looked ordinary, exhausted, even fragile, but what he had just accomplished was extraordinary. "You did this," she said softly, almost unable to believe her words. "You changed the battle. Without a weapon, without armor, without training. How is this possible?" Elias looked at her, breathing heavily. I don't know," he admitted, his voice quiet. "It just felt right." Zyra smiled, a rare, soft expression of wonder. "Humans, you are unpredictable. But perhaps that is your greatest strength." And in that moment, the human who had seemed powerless the day before became something far greater than any alien had ever imagined, a force not just of destruction, but of hope, courage, and possibility. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke and debris floated in the air, reflecting the soft light of the twin moons above. The once chaotic city now lay in a fragile calm, broken towers and scorched spires a silent reminder of the raiders' attack. Yet amidst the devastation, one figure stood, almost serene. Elias. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his hands trembling slightly from the residual energy still coursing through him. Though exhausted, he seemed unbroken, as if the storm had only strengthened him. Zyra descended from the dais, her flowing form casting a long shadow across the shattered plaza. She had seen countless battles, countless warriors perform feats of skill, strength, and cunning. But she had never witnessed anything like this. A human, fragile by alien standards, had not only survived, but had turned the tide against overwhelming odds. Using nothing but his own innate power and instinct, the crowd of alien soldiers and citizens began to stir, their faces a mixture of fear, disbelief, and awe. Murmurs spread through the ranks. "Is it possible?" One whispered. "No weapon, no armor. Just him?" Another shook his head in disbelief. "I've trained my entire life for battles like this, and yet, he did what we could not." Zyra's eyes never left Elias. There was a strange intensity in her gaze, a fascination mixed with respect, and something she had not felt in centuries. Wonder. For so long, she had relied on elite warriors, advanced technology, and generations of perfect genetics. And yet, here was a human, a being so ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in every other way. Elias noticed her approach and straightened his posture, though he felt awkward under her scrutiny. I didn't do it for glory," he said softly, his voice quiet in the eerie silence of the city. "I just wanted to help. I couldn't stand by and watch anyone get hurt." Zyra studied him carefully, her expression softening. She saw in his eyes something she rarely saw in any candidate: selflessness. A willingness to risk himself not for honor, not for power, not for recognition, but for others. In that moment, she understood why she had been drawn to him from the start. This was the essence of courage, the kind of bravery that could not be taught or engineered. The soldiers who had once doubted him now approached cautiously, their skepticism replaced by admiration. A few bowed deeply, acknowledging the human's achievement. Some simply stared, unsure how to process what they had witnessed. Elias, however, seemed almost unaware of the attention. He moved to help clear rubble, guiding civilians and soldiers safely through the wreckage with calm precision. Even in his exhaustion, he thought of others first. Zyra's lips curved into a rare smile, her voice barely above a whisper as she spoke to herself. Power, yes, but more than that. Courage, compassion, understanding. This human carries something no machine, no warrior, no elite soldier ever could. She stepped closer to him, her presence commanding yet gentle. Elias, she said, her voice carrying over the quiet city, you are extraordinary. What you have shown today is beyond anything I imagined. Not because of your strength alone, but because of who you are. Elias looked up at her, confused yet touched. Me? I just did what I felt I had to do, he admitted. His voice was humble, almost shy, and yet it carried a quiet certainty, a truth that resonated deeply with Zyra. Exactly, she said, her tone soft but firm. You do not seek recognition. You do not crave power. And yet, in your actions, you inspire everyone around you. You remind us of what courage truly is. For the first time, Elias saw a different side of Zyra, not the distant, untouchable queen, but a being capable of awe, respect, and genuine admiration. And in that shared moment, a silent bond formed between human and alien. One built not on rank, not on genetics, not on tradition, but on the recognition of true strength in its purest form, the strength to protect, to endure, and to rise above fear. As the smoke swirled around them and the moonlight bathed the shattered city, Zyra finally understood. The human she had chosen was not just a candidate. He was a force that could awaken hope across the galaxy, and she would stand by him to see it happen. The cheers and awe of the city had faded, leaving the capital in a fragile quiet. Zyra knew that power without control could be dangerous. She had seen warriors with immense strength destroy more than they protected. She had seen leaders blinded by ambition, capable of great feats yet unable to understand responsibility. Elias' abilities were extraordinary, but she needed to know if he could handle the weight of his gift. Elias, she said, her voice calm but carrying authority, there is a test you must face. One that will show me whether you understand the responsibility of your power. He looked at her, slightly nervous but attentive. I will do my best, he said quietly. Zyra extended her hand, and in an instant, they were transported to the Edgeworld, a barren planet scarred by constant cosmic storms. The sky was a swirling mix of violent colors, and jagged rocks jutted from the cracked ground. This world had been abandoned by most species, for it was said that no life could survive here. Waiting for him was a creature unlike anything Elias had seen. Its body was massive, covered in dark, glimmering scales, and its eyes glowed with intelligence and fury. The Edgeworld had given it a reputation as a destroyer. It had decimated entire colonies in its rage and cunning. Yet now, it stood silently, regarding Elias with suspicion and power, ready to strike at the smallest provocation. Do not fight it with anger, Zyra instructed, her voice calm but firm. Convince it. Contain it. Protect yourself. Your choices will reveal who you are. Elias swallowed. The creature roared, shaking the jagged cliffs, and charged with astonishing speed. He instinctively raised his hands, ready to push it away with energy. But then he remembered her words. Do not fight it with anger. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Closing his eyes, he reached out, not with force, but with understanding. He allowed himself to feel the creature's fear, its pain, its loneliness. Memories of destruction and loss seemed to echo from it, a language of suffering that he could sense without words. Tentatively, he extended his energy toward it, not to attack, but to communicate. The air shimmered, the ground trembled, and for a moment, the creature froze. Its glowing eyes softened slightly, curiosity mingling with caution. Elias opened his mind further, sending calm, protective intentions, showing that he meant no harm. Minutes passed. The storm raged around them, yet a strange calm enveloped the human and the creature. Slow. Why, the massive being lowered its claws, its body relaxing in a way that seemed almost impossible. Elias guided it gently, redirecting its path away from the planet's fragile cliffs and toward an uninhabited valley where it could live without danger. Zira observed silently, her long form floating above the scene. She had expected to see struggle, perhaps even failure. But Elias had not only succeeded, he had done so with patience, empathy, and wisdom. He had tamed the untamable, not through domination, but through understanding. When they returned to the capital, Elias was exhausted, but his eyes shone with a quiet pride. He had faced something far beyond the ordinary, and he had not relied on raw power alone. He had relied on his heart, his mind, and his ability to see life as more than obstacles or threats. Zira approached him, her expression serious yet softened by awe. "You have done more than survive this test," she said. "You have proven that your power is not just force, but responsibility. That is what makes you extraordinary, Elias. Not just what you can do, but how you choose to do it." Elias looked down, humbled. I just wanted to do what was right. I didn't think of it as a test." "Exactly," she said, her voice gentle. "And that is why you are unlike any other being I have ever encountered. Power without humility is dangerous, but you carry both, and that is why you will change more than this city. You will change worlds." For the first time, Elias realized that his journey was not about winning battles or impressing others. It was about trust, choice, and the courage to act with compassion even when destruction and chaos surrounded him. And in that understanding, he felt more alive and more human than ever before. When Elias returned to the capital, the city seemed smaller somehow, as if the battles and the test on Edgeworld had shifted reality itself. Word had already spread across the galaxy. A human had not only survived impossible challenges, but he had also tamed a destructive creature with nothing but understanding and courage. Rumors of his abilities traveled faster than any message could, igniting awe, curiosity, and in some, fear. The elite candidates and seasoned warriors gathered in the central chamber, whispering among themselves. They had seen humans before, fragile, unassuming, unpredictable. But Elias had redefined what it meant to be human. Not by showing brute strength, or advanced technology, or clever strategy alone, but by demonstrating a rare combination of intuition, empathy, and raw, untapped energy. Zira observed everything from her throne, her long fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air as she processed what she had witnessed. For centuries, she had judged power by control, by precision, by the ability to dominate. And yet, Elias defied every expectation. His power did not come from manipulation or fear, it came from understanding. From the courage to act without hesitation. And from a heart that refused to let harm reach others. She beckoned him to stand beside her. The moment he did, the hall fell silent. Every being present felt it, the shift in presence, the undeniable aura of someone who had achieved the impossible. Some looked at him in wonder, some in disbelief, and a few, who had doubted the human's worth, bowed subtly. Acknowledging the truth before them, "Elias," Zira said, her voice echoing softly through the chamber, "humans have always been underestimated. I see now why. You are unlike anything this galaxy has known." He looked down, feeling the weight of her gaze. I didn't expect anyone to think that. I only did what I thought was right," he admitted quietly. His voice carried humility, a trait the aliens found almost alien itself. They were trained to seek recognition, to prove worth through feats and titles. Elias had done far more than prove himself. He had inspired something deeper. Zira floated closer, the glow from her form reflecting in his eyes. "It is precisely because you did not see glory that your power has meaning. Strength without humility is dangerous. But you carry both. That is why you have changed everything in just a few days." Elias swallowed, overwhelmed. I never thought of it that way. I just felt I couldn't stand by and let others be hurt." "Exactly," Zira said softly, her tone almost reverent. "You remind us that true courage is not about domination or fear. It is about choice, compassion, and the strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. You have awakened hope where none remained." Across the chamber, the murmurs grew louder. Aliens whispered about the human who had faced impossible battles and walked away with not only victory but wisdom, empathy, and understanding. He had done what many of them could not: wield power without cruelty, lead without arrogance, and inspire without demand. Elias felt a strange warmth spread through him. He had always thought of humans as ordinary, fragile, and limited. Yet here he was, standing in a hall of extraordinary beings, recognized not for what he could destroy, but for what he chose to protect. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of power not as domination, but as the ability to make the right choice when everything else demands fear, anger, or hesitation. Zaira's eyes softened. She had ruled for centuries, seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and yet she had never encountered a being like this human. She realized with a mixture of humility and awe that humans carried something the galaxy had long ignored, the spark of unpredictable courage, the resilience to rise against impossible odds, and the empathy to wield power wisely. In that moment, a bond formed between queen and human, a silent recognition of mutual respect, trust, and admiration. Elias had not only revealed his power, he had revealed the essence of humanity to a galaxy that had never truly understood it. And Zaira, for the first time, saw a future where humans were not underestimated, not dismissed, but honored for the strength that lay hidden beneath ordinary appearances. And in that revelation, both human and alien realized that the galaxy would never be the same again. The city was alive with whispers of Elias' deeds. Everywhere he went, citizens, soldiers, and even rival species looked at him differently. The fragile human who had once stood quietly in the crowd had become a symbol of courage, hope, and the untapped potential of humanity. And yet, Elias remained the same, humble, thoughtful, and quietly determined. He did not seek praise. He simply wanted to do what was right. Zaira observed him from the throne room, her long shimmering form casting soft light over the chamber. She had seen many rise to power, many command armies, many wield destruction. But she had never seen anyone like Elias, not for strength alone, nor for brilliance, but for the way he carried his power with compassion, humility, and understanding. Every choice he made, every act of courage, inspired those around him. She descended to stand beside him, and for the first time, the barrier between queen and human felt unneeded. "Elias," she said softly, her voice carrying warmth that few had ever heard from her, "you have changed more than this city, more than this court. You have changed me. You have reminded me of what strength truly means." Elias looked at her, his brown eyes steady but filled with the same humility that had guided him through battles and tests. I didn't do it to change anyone," he admitted quietly. "I just couldn't ignore what needed to be done." "That is exactly why you inspire," Zaira said, a smile brushing her lips. "You act not for recognition, not for power, but for what is right. That is the essence of courage, Elias. That is why you stand apart from all others I have ever known." A soft silence fell between them. A silence that carried respect, admiration, and something deeper, trust. The court looked on, unsure whether to speak or move, as they witnessed the bond forming between the human and the alien queen. It was not a bond of rank, nor of obligation. It was a bond forged in the fires of battle, tempered by choice, and solidified by mutual understanding. From that moment, Elias' presence beside Zaira was no longer questioned. Together, they led not through fear, not through dominance, but through example. The humans and aliens who followed them learned that true strength was measured not by what you could destroy, but by what you chose to protect. The galaxy began to shift its perception of humans. Once considered weak, ordinary, and insignificant, they were now seen as beings capable of extraordinary courage, wisdom, and resilience. Elias, standing quietly by the queen, felt a sense of purpose deeper than anything he had known. His power was not just for battle, it was a responsibility. It was a gift that could inspire hope across worlds, heal wounds, and protect those who could not protect themselves. And with Zaira's trust, he felt the weight of that responsibility, not as a burden, but as a call to action. Zaira looked at him again, awe and pride mingling in her expression. "I have ruled for centuries," she said softly, "and I have never known a being like you. Humans, you carry a spark that the galaxy has long overlooked. You remind me that hope can be found in the smallest, most unlikely of forms. You remind us all what it means to rise above limits." Elias smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the twin moons outside the chamber. "I only did what I could," he said. "I didn't know it would mean so much." "It means more than you can imagine," Zaira replied. "And because of you, the galaxy will never underestimate humans again." The two of them stood together, human and alien, not as master and subject, not as ruler and servant, but as partners united by trust, respect, and shared purpose. Around them, the galaxy began to change, slowly but surely, one active coup.